Welcome to Test, ladies and gentlemen. Man, I appreciate you guys very much for stopping by. So you guys know that we got the Sinquefield Cup going on right now, and this is round number 5. So I went ahead and grabbed the game Levon Aronian versus Alireza Firouzja. This is a really good game, man. It's like chock full of concepts and all kinds of things, man. But for all my people in the Philippines, I will say Maraming Salamat. Anybody who is coming from Armenia, I will say merci. Anybody coming from France, I will say merci beaucoup. And if you guys are ready to go, man, let's take a look and see what we got for this game, homie. So we got D4, one of the best by tests. We got knight to F6, so we start the Indian games. We got C4, E6. We do see knight to C3, and this does invite the Nimzo-Indian defense. And we do see it on the board, Nimzo. Super famous opening. We have knight to F3. We got the move B6. Queen goes to B3. You know, this bishop, I don't like it. So, queen to B3 it is, right? So, we got the move A5. And this is, I mean, you got to protect the bishop, man. Don't just leave the bishop hanging there. I mean, I know everybody did it at some point in life. You just hang a piece for no reason. And you're like, what? Don't do it right here, though. So, we see A5. We got G3. We got bishop to B7, bishop to G2. So, we kind of have like a little Nimzo Catalan type situation. Queen's Indian type scenario. Very common stuff. You know, usually you'll see like a D5 and stuff like that. You know, pretty common stuff. We got the move D6. We got castles by white. Knight B to D7. And queen goes back to C2. It's more common for it to be on C2. It's not like absolutely common for it to be on B3. So queen to B3 was really just kind of testing to see what black wanted to do. And now that has been accomplished, we just go ahead and fall back to C2. You know, E4 is definitely an idea in these positions. We do see the move castles. We got rook over to D1. Always a good thing to put the rook opposite a queen or a king. You never know what might open up on you. Queen goes to E7, just sidestepping all of that. And then we do see the novelty of the game, which is B3. But, I mean, even though you don't normally see this double fianchetto, I mean, you know, you want to try to get the bishop out. What better way to do it than to put it on this beautiful long diagonal? Something I did want to notice, if we back up just one move, there is only one game in the database that features this exact position. And in the game, we actually saw bishop to E3. You know, just adding like more solid protection to this D4 pawn. But the most interesting thing, I know my people from the Philippines are going to like it. This game is between Anatoly Karpov and Eugene Tori from 2018. It's a much more recent game, but you guys know the legend, Eugenio Tori. So I just wanted to mention that real quick. But we do see the move B3. We got the move C5. Bishop goes to B2. And if you pay it, like if you're looking at the situation, both sides literally have done everything that they need to do. They have every single one of their pieces developed. They got their rooks connected. So, I mean, it's kind of just like, you know, you're all in right at this point, right? We're super in the middle game right here. We do see the move D5. Now, the one thing I will say, the reason why this is slightly better for white, even though you really probably can't see anything else, is the simple fact that I told you guys before, usually you see D5. You don't always see the fianchetto, but a lot of the times you do. But generally, you do see a D5, and you see that E6, D5 type of a structure, and then you see C5 coming later, kind of similar to French's and things like that. And we did not see that here. We saw D6 first and then D5. So it's a little slight waste of a tempo. So that is why you see white just being slightly better than black when D5 could have just kind of come in one swoop. We got pawn taking D5, bishop taking C3. We see the nice intermezzo, D6. You know, you're going to be getting rid of this pawn anyway. It's going to be dropping, so you might as well get rid of it. Go down swinging. So we do redirect the queen after it takes on D6. We got queen taking C3. And we do see queen going back to E7, stepping back out of the way of the rook. And, I mean, white is dreaming of a white Christmas. They're dreaming that for some reason this pawn moves and this knight just says, hey man, or like right here, I don't even care. And then you see a checkmate, man. But we're not going to see that, bro. Don't get so happy and excited. We do see pawn taking C5, knight taking C5, and then we do see knight to E5. Now, white has double bishops going into this endgame. The board is completely wide open. So, yes, you would like to preserve the bishops, but, I mean, it is beneficial to threaten a situation where you do remove one pair of bishops off the board, and then you just have, you know, a little bit of superior minor pieces going into an endgame. So bishop does take g2. We see king taking g2, and we do see queen to b7 with check. Why not check the king, homie? It almost never hurts, man. We do see queen blocking with f3. So for those of you that are wondering, I mean, is there other moves? There's literally like 3 different moves. You can just kind of move the king somewhere. You can move the queen in the way with f3, but also an honorable mention is f3. And f3, not only is it blocking your king, but it's doing actually a very good job at making sure to maintain the restriction of these knights. You see that f3 takes both of these squares away, so black doesn't really have an ability to really improve their knights at all. So I mean, it was definitely one of the moves that I had considered, and I thought maybe I might have blundered because it wasn't like on their radar, the commentators, and I was like, did I blunder? No, it's a good move. Anyways, we do see queen to f3. We got knight f to e4. We see bishop to d4. Then we do have the move f5, and f5 is actually quite a bit weakening. F7 pawn was really one of the most crucial pawns to protect this e6 point. So it has softened up e6 quite a bit. And we actually see knight to c4 in the game, which is a very legitimate move. But we had a very, very killer move in the position, and it was actually bishop takes c5. And this is what you guys saw in the thumbnail. Bishop takes c5. It puts you in somewhat of a pickle. You basically have 2 options. You either take with the b pawn, which definitely horribly damages your structure, or you take with the knight. This absolutely loses you a pawn immediately because you do see knight taking c5, queen taking b7, knight taking b7, and then knight to d7. It threatens this rook, and it just wins this pawn pretty much straight up. So this is definitely something that Levon, I mean, you know, I'm not sure why he didn't go into that, but it is what it is, man. We see knight going to c4. So definitely like a good move. It's not a bad move at all. We do see the move a4. This does allow b4. Your knight was actually pretty nicely placed on c5 because Aronian let it live. So you really kind of wanted to maintain that. Since you pushed a4, it does allow b4, knocking the knight somewhere. So the knight does retreat back to d7. And you do kind of want to be careful in this position. This is why we see king to g1, because you don't want to just go off moving your queen somewhere, because knight moving anywhere can give you some pretty nasty, like that. It can give you some pretty nasty discoveries on this diagonal to the king. So that is why we see king going to g1 and just sidestepping all of that. We got knight d to f6, bishop takes f6, and of course you can't take with the knight because the queen is hanging on b7, so we do see rook taking f6. We got queen sidestepping over because f3 is going to be coming pretty soon. We do see rook to c8. We got rook a to c1. We got b5. Knight goes to e5. We see rook f to f8. We got the move f3 because, I mean, this knight is not welcome. It's like, you know, you came, you didn't have no invitation on me. Like, what are you doing? So the knight goes back to f6. We see rook taking c8, queen taking c8, and we have successfully gotten one set of rooks off the board. So, you know, it's definitely white for a choice here. It's not like white is absolutely winning, but trading down into an endgame is definitely not going to be bad. We do see rook to c1 taking over to c5, hitting the queen. The knight goes to d5. We see rook taking c8, knight taking e3. And sometimes this is beneficial when you just say, hey, man, I'm not going to retreat my queen nowhere. I'm just going to counterattack your queen. The one problem with this situation is it does let white get into a beneficial position. After we see this trade here, it does allow this rook to come back and attack this b pawn, and you really have nothing better to do than to just go rook over to ba. So it actually puts black in a pretty defensive situation, and everything is starting to kind of tip more white's favor. So the knight goes to c6, hitting the rook. The rook goes down to b6, and then we do redirect the knight down to d4. And, I mean, of course, if black had no, like, moves, this would just be absolutely losing, you know, for black. But they do have a3, which is very nice. Explaining a3 a little bit, you know, what you would really like to do if you're white is play a3 and connect your a and b pawns and just keep them protected. So black playing a3 instead separates your pawns permanently, and it doesn't allow you to connect them. You always want to try to connect your pawns, so this is definitely a nice idea here. We do see knight taking b5, and we do see knight going back to d5. We got knight taking e3, we got rook taking b4, knight going down to c2. And we are prepared, because the knight is protected on c2, to push this a3 pawn, which is what we're going to see. We got knight to c2, and then we have this a3 move, and everything's pretty much held together. Everything is pretty equal, but you do have this a pawn that can possibly be pushed down the board. It is a rook pawn, but I mean, it's still an outside pass pawn on it. So we do see g5. Black is trying to get as much counterplay as possible. We got king going to f2. We got the move h5. We got rook going over to b5. We see rook to c4. And this does allow white to kind of force a situation. We got knight going to b4. And now the problem is you've blocked the rook from your pawn. And you are going to be able to start pushing it if black literally does nothing. So it doesn't absolutely force the trade, but it's definitely one of your better options to do that. Am I blurry right now? Okay, no, I'm good. Okay. And so we do see knight taking b4, pawn taking b4. We got king down to f7. We got king up to e3. You're definitely at this point, with everything pretty much off the board, you're trying to get these kings into position because this endgame is definitely going to come down to who has the better king. We'll get to that in a minute. We got rook to c3 with check. The king goes up to d4. Beautiful move. The rook goes down to c2, and we do see king setting down to d3, just protecting everything. And we are really getting ready to start pushing this pawn. We got rook going to b2. We got rook to b7 with check. There's a nice little amount of distance there, so we're going to start getting this pawn rolling. We got king to f6. We see b5. We see king to e5, trying to sneak in there. And we do see the move b6. And you see this white pawn is getting pretty close, man. I mean, it's kind of making this move over here, man. So we do see king to d6. We got the rook up to b8. We got king over to c6. We see the move b7. And this is one of the crucial positions that we get into. And this is super, super rook endgame right here. And like I said, the position of the kings is what basically lets you know, like, hey, why is a certain side winning? Because looking at it, it looks fairly even. It looks like black is about to corral that pawn and trade rooks. And it's like 4 on 4. Like, that's got to be like equal, right? Actually, no. We do see the move g4. And in this position, like I was saying, so you guys might be wondering, okay, if just rook takes here and we trade down, like what's so wrong with that? Isn't it like dead even? Absolutely not. Rook takes b7, king takes b7. And like I said before, it's the position of the kings that makes all the difference in the world. This white king is way better than this black king. And it looks exactly like this. King goes to d4, king goes to c7, king goes to e5. And you see a situation where this white king is going to be able to start putting pressure and start capturing some stuff. King is pretty much going to have to go to d7, and this allows king to f6, and you're just basically being, you know, an abuser as white with the king. Like, you're just harassing black. So going back in the position, we see b7, and then we do see g4. Black does not want to change anything on this b file. We do see king going over to e3, and this is a really nice find. We got pawn taking f3, and then king taking f3. Going back, in this position, some of you guys might have been wondering, well, wait a minute. Like, can I just go king to c7? Like, can I just, like, attack this, you know, white rook with my king? Well, you can, but it looks like this. King goes to c7. You do see rook coming over to e8. Rook takes b7. Rook takes e6. And then after rook to b4, you do see rook going over to f6. And it is still coming down to the positions of the kings. You see that the black king is way too far away from these black pawns on the king side. So you have too much pressure. And if this rook ever moves anywhere, you have king to f4 and you are just doing the same thing that you were kind of doing before. So you see that everything in these positions comes down to the position of the kings. So going back, we got king to e3, pawn takes f3, king takes f3. And you still see these positions of the kings. So that's like the best way that you can describe this endgame is these positions of the kings. So we do see rook to b6. We're anticipating rook going over to e8. And then if rook goes to e8, we can take b7 with the king. And we can protect this e6 pawn. But white is like, bro, I got moves that I could spare. So we do see king to f4 with the same idea as before. Rook goes to b4 with check. We see king going over to g5. We got a rook over to e4. And we have actually reached a point in the game that I do want to ask you, for anybody out there that wants to try, what does white play here? And then more importantly, kind of discussing it, what is the main idea behind this move? So if you want to pause the video and try to find that move, go ahead and do so. Okay, cool. So I've actually mentioned it a few times before, but the main idea in this, in endgames period, especially when you get into rook endgames, is can you successfully try to cut off the king from literally the action, right? And what way would you try to do that? And it is by checking the king and by threatening to just promote the pawn straight up. And this move that I'm looking for is rook to c8. You have put black in a very, very unfavorable position because what do? You don't really want to step over here at all because this rook is going to cut you off, but you can't allow this pawn to come up and promote any kind of way. So you really have to go king takes b7. And this does allow rook to go to c2 and protect the pawn that you have. And you see that this king is completely cut off from coming over this way. So it's literally just kind of confined to these two files, right? And that is not where you want to be. So what white has done is white has activated their king quite a bit. And they've used their rook to cut off the opponent's king. So just based on those thoughts alone, you see how this is a much better, more winning endgame for white. Not absolutely one, because you can still mess it up, but it is definitely much better than black's position. We see the move h4. You got to get some counterplay somewhere, homie. We got pawn taking h4, and then we have rook to g4, and this is the first test of Levon Aronian's endgame knowledge. Where are you going to go? I will tell you this. King h5, king h6 is a complete draw. Because what you have just done is you have just isolated your own king to literally just here. That's not something that you want to do. You definitely want to move into the center. You want to be able to be as mobile with your king as possible. So that is why we see king to f6. You're just giving up the h4 pawn. You're like, hey, man, you get my h pawn. I'm going to get this central pawn right here. And if you go for my h2 pawn, I'm going to get this pawn. And I'm going to figure out some kind of way to get this bad boy up. We do see rook to g2. And this is the second test. This is you have other moves, yes. But h3 is definitely the move that you want to make in this position. And so we got f4, and this is kind of sneaky. This is a little bit sneaky. Like you're trying to say, hey, man, f3, and then what are you about to do? Because you can't take because your rook is gone. So this definitely does create a little bit of a problem. So we just say, hey, man, I'm going to go ahead and just abandon my e pawn. I'm going to get your f pawn, homie. So we got rook taking e2, rook taking f4, and it might seem crazy because you're thinking, man, these double H pawns look ugly, right? Nah, it's actually not that lost. You're actually doing okay. We got the move e5. We see rook over to c4. And the entire idea becomes very clear in just a few. You got rook going to e3. You got the move h5. You see e4. And then you do see the move king to g5. Now, backing up real quick. You guys might have looked at this and said, well, what happens if rook takes h3? And then it's like I'm threatening, h5, right? And then I still got a pawn right here, right? No. If rook takes h3, this takes us to a very common in-game understanding, which is the Lucena position. If you do take on h3, we would see king to g5. If you see rook to g3 with check, we just block with the rook. And then if you go over to h3 again, we just block with the rook again. And then once you come and you check, we're just moving away. But what we've done is we've managed to put our pawn behind. We've managed to put our rook behind the pawn to try to push instead of it being in front. And we have built the bridge, which is very common in in-game play. Usually it looks something like this. Just to give you an example, let's say this goes down here. I'm literally blundering, but it's okay. Bam. Okay. King goes over here. Rook goes over. This is the exact position that you build the bridge with. But you see that it kind of takes a little bit of a different form in the other way. But going back to what we had in the game. We did see h5. We got the move e4. We see king down to g5. And the king is literally planning to hide in between these pawns. It's crazy. It's literally crazy. The king goes to b6. We got h4. We see king going to b5. We see rook up to c8. Rook goes down to e1. And then we see the move h6, and it is in this position that Alireza Firouzja resigns the game. Like I said, when rook comes over here, we're literally just going to hide this way. And you have no way to come up and block these pawns because this rook is protecting this back rank. And you cannot go to g7. So that is very, very, very crucial in the position. And that is that game. So this was the second decisive game of the tournament. There were no others. There was a Wesley So game in this game. And so that is that. I appreciate everybody very much. Maraming salamat aking makaibigan. Magandang umaga, hello ulit. For seeing you again. Merci. And then merci beaucoup. And I'm going to see you guys next time.